Joining us right now to talk about some of the big tech headlines over the past week, Geoff Lewis, founder and managing partner of Bedrock Capital, which is invested in OpenAI. Geoff, it's great to talk to you this morning. We've been watching a whole number of things taking place. We've obviously watched the end of this Google trial, which may have a huge impact on things. We've watched OpenAI, which you have a big investment in, get into the search business in just the past week or two. And then, Elon Musk, who's obviously now super tight with Trump, is having great success, it appears, with XAI. So I want to get to that and about 100 other things. But where do you see the race at this point as it relates to the large language models?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a super exciting time, Andrew, and still continue to believe that OpenAI is the clear leader. There is this dynamic with these LLMs, these large language models, where you've got a lot of catching up that happens, and then other groups then exceed the folks that have caught up to them. So you've had Anthropic chasing OpenAI. XAI has done a phenomenal job of scaling up fast with their supercluster. But the wedge that I think OpenAI has that is still massively underappreciated is it was last publicly reported they have over 200 million weekly active users on the ChatGPT consumer product. And I think that is just a extreme wedge. I mean, when I walk through, something that I do that's not so common is I walk through the malls, I see what people are using. I hear people using it to translate things in stores. I hear folks in elevators talking to ChatGPT. And at this point, it's just the definitive consumer brand for AI. And, I think regardless of what happens with the LLM race, which I do believe OpenAI will ultimately win, it is the consumer brand at this point.
Do you ultimately believe that OpenAI succeeds as its own consumer brand and people are paying it directly? Or do you think it will succeed as a result, for example, of the partnership with Microsoft, which has come under a lot of criticism recently from folks like Mark Benioff and others?
Yeah, I mean, it's the consumer side is really ChatGPT, which is OpenAI, and so I feel from a consumer standpoint, it is kind of winning in that position. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with X.AI. I mean, one dynamic that I think we might find down the road is intuitively, I don't think consumers will necessarily want to be using the same AI that is hyper tied with the government. And so I think there's an interesting strategic question around what Elon's doing, and he's doing a lot of phenomenal things right now. There's a question of to what degree does the X.AI stuff become somewhat tied in with the U.S. government over time? And I think there's a sense in which that might be extremely valuable, very, very helpful to the U.S. And then there is this question on who wins consumer. And at this point, it truly is OpenAI.
Geoff, do me a favor. Just unpack what you just said there about XAI and Elon Musk and its relationship with the government. How are you seeing that manifest itself?
I'm not seeing it manifest itself in any way today, but Elon is a very, very successful government contractor through SpaceX and other companies, and specifically SpaceX today. Unbelievable business beyond the government. They have a phenomenal business with Starlink, but he does do work there, and it's plausible that in the future some or all of these large language model companies might do work with the government. And I think that intuitively, as a consumer, I feel like you are more likely to trust a consumer product like a chatbot, an AI chatbot that helps you, if it's somewhat less tied in with the government, is my intuition.
Geoff, under a Trump administration, there's a view that there will be a lot more M&A activity than there has been in the past. Historically, some of these big LLMs probably would have liked early on to sell themselves, perhaps even, or at least a Microsoft would have wanted to own an OpenAI, or a Google or an Amazon would have wanted to own an Anthropic or something of that sort. Do you see big transformational deals happening in the future under this new administration?
I think there will be big deals that happen. I don't know how transformational they're going to be. I think there's sort of they're going to be winners and losers. It's possible that the Amazon Anthropic partnership narrowly works for Amazon. I think the main contingency in this investment they're making right now is Anthropic has to use their Amazon chips in lieu of the NVIDIA chip. So that it's not clear that that's a purely as a venture capitalist, I'm trying to get a certain return I think the return for Amazon might just be Anthropic using their chips. I do expect that there's going to be more consolidation. We've seen some acquisitions here in the private markets. But then on the other hand, you have things like the Google DOJ dynamic where it's been reported that the DOJ is suggesting to Google that they divest their investment in Anthropic. And so I think these things will cut in multiple ways. But net, yeah, there should be a lot more M&A over the next few years. I do expect to see that.
And finally, Geoff, do you see OpenAI then as a buyer or a seller?
I would see them as a buyer.
Of?
It's not clear today what they would buy, but I certainly don't think it would be Anthropic or another LLM. I would see them, to the extent there are these wrappers on ChatGPT, these relatively thin applications that are gaining traction in the enterprise, or different consumer wrappers on OpenAI. If anything really gains mass adoption, they might be a buyer for something like that. They might buy teams for their talent on the research side. There's a finite number of these extraordinary researchers. One argument I've heard is the researchers are getting less valuable because the AI is now improving itself. But I still think that you'll see talent acquisitions and acquisitions around different products that have gotten large distribution on top of OpenAI's API.